friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sasha. Today we're going to be doing another book review. This one I actually was surprised with because I applied for it in 2024, kind of forgot that I applied, figured I just didn't get accepted, and then come February, end of January I think, I got sent an ARC in my email and it was for Every Move You Make by Sloan Spencer. So thank you so much to Sloan and their team for sending this ARC to me to read and review. So by the time you guys are seeing this, the book is already out. The book was published on February 14th. Before we dive any further into the review or my thoughts, let's take a quick break to hear a word from today's sponsor. Hey there friends, it's me, Sasha, and today's sponsor is my Etsy shop, Dreaming of Stars Co. Have you ever wished you could match the vibe of your favorite book to a bookmark? Have you ever started reading a book but wanted to take a break and realized there was nothing close by except the last receipt from your library to use to hold your place? Hey, we're here to listen. We don't judge. Whether it's dark romance, queer, indie, fantasy, sci-fi, nonfiction, we've got bookmark designs just for you. And when I say we, it's really just me, but the we makes it sound, official or something. All my bookmarks are made right here in this very room. By me, myself, Sasha Marie. You can use code WELCOME10 on your first order for a discount. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Every Move You Make is listed as book number 2 in the Rugby Lovers series, but I didn't even know it was a series until right now when I pulled it up on Storygraph to be able to talk about it for this review. So it can absolutely be read as a standalone. There was never any moment where I was confused about characters because we had met them in the previous book or storylines overlapping. I understood everything because I thought this was a standalone or the first in a series, so you don't have to go into it having read the first one if you just want to dive right in. I particularly enjoy sports romances, but very specific ones. Hockey is probably at the top of my list. That's one I read the most commonly. This is my first ever rugby romance, and I was very, very excited. At the time that I had applied for this, Alona Mar was still on Dancing with the Stars, so that was front of my mind. I learned about rugby through her, and then my TikTok algorithm, RIP TikTok because I don't use it anymore, when my TikTok algorithm realized I followed her, it would start sending me just rugby team videos that they would post themselves. What a sport! So I was very interested to see a sort of rugby romance instead of the hockey romances that I'm more used to, learn all the fun terms. There was a great glossary the first few pages of the book, which I was a little intimidated by, but I said, you know what, I read through it, and then I was like, I'm sure in context this will make more sense. And it did, because I never felt really lost or uncertain. I think if you've seen a couple rugby plays before, you'll get the hang of the terminology pretty quickly. I definitely don't think the rugby terms are a barrier to entry. If you're worried about that, I say just push through. You'll be fine. We didn't get to see a ton of the games of the rugby players or aspects. We caught a bunch of practices because it's a coach-player dynamic, and we saw some flashbacks of them in college, and we saw pieces of games or pieces of a highlight reel moment kind of thing, but it was never a full game that had maybe there was one game. I remember this game coming up, and then I remember what happened during the game and after the game, but I feel like we didn't really sit in that moment too long. This was definitely much more of a character study and a focus of these rugby players and their lives sort of in and outside of rugby itself. So as you can see from the cover, I've already edited this so you can see the cover since I had the ebook version of it. I can't hold it up like I normally do. As you can see from the cover, we have 3 characters who are going to be our main characters, Dell, Isaiah, and Robin. This does become a polyamorous throuple, so if that is something you're not interested in, this probably isn't the romance for you. I had such a good time getting to sort of experience this For some of the characters, it was a brand new sort of feelings and flirtation happening. For two of the characters, they've known each other since college, and when I got to the acknowledgments, the author actually said that a lot of those characters' interactions were similar to how her and her husband met. And I thought that was so adorable that this comes from some real life experiences, and it just made it like that much more special. I think the flashback scenes were actually some of my favorites in the book. I feel like I've thrown a lot of weird details at you without sort of giving you a lot of context, so let's jump in from the beginning. Our first main character is Isaiah. He was a professional rugby player who had an injury, and then he came back home and played with his men's league, and then we start the book with him getting another extremely serious injury that means he can no longer play. So he sort of is transitioning from player to some other role in the community. It just so happens the women's rugby's coach needs to step down from her position, and he is sort of optioned in for that role as their coach. On that team is a character named Robin, who has become incredibly famous not only in rugby spaces but as sort of like international celebrity status because of social media, because of her women empowerment stances, the campaigns that she does. So everyone knows Robin, but Isaiah knows Robin because of college. They met when he was a sophomore and she was a freshman, and they were on like summer rugby traveling camps or things. I can't remember if that's quite accurate, but you get the picture essentially. So he's sort of known her his entire life, and well, not his entire life, since college. They're both into their late 20s, early 30s as the book starts, and he has followed her career and her personal life in what some may call a stalkerish way, but in a way that when Robin finds out about it, she thinks is really sweet and endearing, and everyone around her is kind of like, you read too much dark romance. So that's sort of the tone of the book. Like, yeah, he was stalking her. Yeah, maybe none of her relationships worked out because he scared off every man who, like, started to date her, and he's taken jobs to be in places where she will be, and she has had no idea this entire time, but she has always had feelings for him and just thought that he never reciprocated, so she didn't pursue it anymore. Then the like triangle, the third point to this is Dell, who is a personal trainer, and he just so happens to train Isaiah after his latest injury that needs a lot of PT and therapy to recover from. And he also trains Robin and a lot of the US women's players on her team. So he is the third point. He finds out that Robin likes Isaiah. He knows Isaiah likes Robin. So Dell comes up with this plan to teach Robin how to flirt to try and win Isaiah over. And this is all happening before Isaiah becomes her head coach. So now we have the three of them sort of like, Isaiah sees Dell and Robin on their fake date. He goes into a jealous rage. He's so upset because he also likes Dell, so he doesn't know if he should be jealous of Dell or jealous of Robin, or just like very confusing time for everyone involved, because Dell also has a rule where he will not date his clients because he used to date them a lot, and his business suffered because of it. This is sort of the tangled web that we meet our characters in, and it does sort of just get more tangled as the book goes on. There are numerous reasons why these characters should not be together, including the power imbalance of Isaiah and Robin, coach and player, including the PR nightmare it would be if they found out that Dell was dating not just one of his clients, but two of his clients, and both of them are really high up in the hierarchical sports realm, right? Not just like some mom who goes in every day to work out. That's a little bit different, you know? The other thing I loved about this novel was getting to meet everyone's family, with the exception of Robin's family. Robin's parents are both Olympic athletes. They met at the Olympics and she was conceived at the Olympics, and they call her their mistake. And her entire life is devoted to making sure their mistake has a good outcome. So you can only imagine the pressure that they put on this woman, and it's just really unfortunate. And I think there's a passage towards the very end of the book, like right before we get to the epilogue, where I think we're in Dell's point of view, because the book does jump between all three characters, where he mentions that him and Isaiah will be there the moment that Robin needs to cut her parents out of her life, because they can see that moment coming. But until then, he understands how complicated having a relationship with your parents, who are like your parents and you grew up with them, and there are times when they're loving and nurturing, but there are other times when they are incredibly hurtful and degrading and say really heinous things to you. And he put it so perfectly that he's like, we're definitely not keeping score. We're definitely not keeping track of how awful they are to her every time she interacts with them. We would never do that. But at the same time, we will be there when she's coming to this decision on her own, and we might, push her there a little gently that she needs to cut them off at some point, if it ever got to that point. And I was really appreciative of that part being in the book, because the way that her parents treat her is not correct, and I think that it needed to be discussed, that you can't just sit by and watch your loved one get beaten up by their loved one verbally every time they interact. What a mental roller coaster. Dell has a great big family. He's from a southern state, so his little southern accent comes out when he goes home. I'm not going to tell you much about his family because it's kind of a really fun spoiler that both Robin and Isaiah get to experience, and I don't want to ruin that for you, because it made me so giddy, and it was so silly, and not silly in a funny way, but silly in oh my god, this is perfect for this character. This makes his personality and everything makes so much more sense. Then we have Isaiah, whose mother passed away when he was 8 years old. He has a ton of brothers and sisters. He has nieces and nephews. They have a family dinner every Sunday, so we get to see them interacting a lot. And that was the one part towards the end of the novel when he finally reads the diary his mother kept for all of the children. They each got one after her death. And he finally starts to read it, where I was crying. So death of a parent is not really in every scene for Isaiah, but it comes up repeatedly. It's not just a one-off mention. It is a tangible emotion. It is an undercurrent of sadness and loss and grief. And towards the end of the book, when everything else is kind of settled in his life, is when he's finally able to sort of reopen that wound, and it hurt me. It really did. The overall feeling I had while I was reading this book was really just giddy excitement, because these characters this was their first time getting in this sort of relationship. For two of them, for Isaiah and Robin, they'd been circling each other for so long that when they finally came together and things were happening, it was just yes! And then adding Dell as an additional character, I loved how him and Robin met, and I loved that part of the storyline. There was just everything about this made me so happy and giddy, with the exception of the third act breakup, third act big inciting incident. I despised that part, but that's just me as a person. And I know that these books have a formula, and they kind of need to have this moment where for the betterment of the other characters, the one character is gonna self-sacrifice and make this big display, but it's gonna break everyone else's hearts, and he thinks he or she thinks they're doing the right thing, but you know, it's not. It's the stupid thing. And you just have to sit there and wait for it to resolve. And you just hope and know that it will have a happily ever after and it will resolve. And it did. This book does have a happily ever after. But that part I was not a fan of. I didn't like it. I didn't like reading it. I find those plot devices, which again, I think are a necessary element, a necessary evil to these romance books, but I really don't enjoy reading them. So that's like the only time where I was like not having a good time. Everything else, I had a smile on my face. I was laughing out loud. I just really enjoyed these characters. There is a lot of body positivity in this book, especially when it comes to rugby players and athleticism and what that looks like and what that means and beauty standards. There were all of these different conversations because Isaiah, and you can see sort of from the cover, they talk about how he is a bigger guy. Like, he's full of muscle, big thighs, big arms, can take down a truck, right? Big dude, big scary dude. But he also has a big belly. And that is completely normal for the type of rugby position he had, for the game that he played, and it is what sort of assists him the best in his athletic endeavors when he was a professional player, and then when he came back home after his professional career and now as a coach. And then there's a similar conversation happening with Robin where, you know, her mom always talks about her shoulders being too big, her jaw is too square, she looks too masculine, and so she intentionally tries to counteract that by, when she's not playing rugby, dressing incredibly feminine, wearing a lot of makeup. And she does that, she says, on one hand because she likes it and she likes how it makes her look, but on the other hand, she sometimes wishes she could just go outside and be photographed in like a big baggy t-shirt and sweatpants and not get comments about how masculine she looks. Like, she is a woman, she wants to be seen as a woman, despite how powerfully built her body is to accommodate the sport that she plays and the career she's chosen for herself. And then you have on the complete like other side of the spectrum Dell, who is a personal trainer. They call him a Greek god continuously. He is a specimen of a man, and he just sort of has like no issues with how he looks. He doesn't have any like internal monologue about his body, but he is incredibly empowering for Isaiah and Robin because he is the one who teaches them repeatedly how to love themselves through how he loves them. And I thought that was a really beautiful moment that we got to see. So this book has, I think, some really great body positivity if you're looking for something like that. And it also obviously has some really great queer representation. There's a scene where they go to Pride. Obviously, two of the characters are bisexual, and Robin, I think, would be considered straight. There's a lesbian mom couple in the book. A lot of the players on Robin's team are lesbians. So we get a lot of different perspectives and diverse characters. There's even some Spanish thrown into the book. And I really liked how this author did it, where she would have the full quote in Spanish and then under it she would write it again in italics in English. And I appreciated that because my Spanish, not so good. I could get the gist of what they were saying in Spanish, but I didn't get full context, and full context was very nice. So, I don't know, I'm rambling. I think I'm gonna go. I enjoyed this book so much. I'm so thankful to have gotten an arc. I really needed a win after having such a bad reading month in January. And yeah, I think this is a really sweet romance. I think if you're looking for something, with the exception of, there's like a few conflicts that come up, with revenge porn being one of them, with the grief of losing a parent being another one, with dealing with parents who are destructive when they think they're being productive. Those are some of the heavier themes, but overall, this is like a really light, fun story, and I enjoyed it so very much, and I hope you pick it up. So thank you again to Sloan, Spencer, and her team for sending me this arc. I had such a good time with it. I hope you guys will too. Please let me know in the comments if you're going to give this one a try. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!